You've entered Bookstorm. Your favorite authors are here to dive down deep into their best-selling books. Stay tuned to brave the storm.
Well, welcome back to Bookstorm Podcast, listeners. We've got you all over the world. We have listeners in 101 countries, all 50 states, and more than 2,000 cities. And we know why. It is because you are tuning in to hear these fantastic authors that we are bringing on the show. And today we have a three-peat. We have New York Times and internationally best-selling author, Alka Joshi. And we are thrilled. Welcome, Alka.
Thank you, Kristen. I'm so excited to be here again.
Again, I was going to say you are a friend. I'm not going to say old friend. You are a repeat friend on our show. We are absolutely excited because we have read all of your books. And in fact, I've even watched some of the scenes that you filmed on your website. I'm just thrilled for you. And so I want to tell our listeners just a little bit about your background, because I know they probably know you from past episodes, but we want to make sure for our new listeners. As we mentioned, you are an internationally best-selling author, and it started with a trilogy of books that you wrote called the Jaipur Trilogy. And we talked about two of those, The Secret Keeper of Jaipur and The Perfumist of Paris. We are thrilled because the trilogy has been translated into 29 languages and is in the process of becoming a series for television. I was wondering if you can give us maybe a little sneak peek about what's happening.
So after the advent of the henna artist, all of a sudden I'm getting calls from movie people. Oh my goodness, we have to produce the henna artist in some way. What would you like, Alka? And I said, I would like an episodic series because I love to binge and I love to watch episode after episode. I cannot just stop at one. It's like a box of chocolates. And so I said, all right, fine. You guys run with it. You don't want the author involved. Fine. I won't be involved. You guys know best and do what you need to do. And what happened in that process is they were able to get a lot of money from Netflix to put a writer's room together, to have a whole group of writers writing these scripts. But they weren't getting the scripts that really resonated with the book, the actual story of the henna artist. They were going in all kinds of different directions, following what was happening in Hollywood at the time. Like, oh, let's have it look like Bridgerton because that is the hot thing right now. And so after 4 years, Netflix finally said, you know what, you guys, we just don't know that we can continue with this. We are going to abandon the project at this point. So then the producer said, okay, Alka, go ahead and renew the option because we would like to take this out to other streamers who were interested 4 years ago. And I just really thought hard about it. And I thought, I would like to get the IP back. I would like to write my own story. I would like to help write my own story of the henna artist and all of these characters and what's happening in the subsequent novels, because I feel like I have the best handle on who these characters are and where they're going and how they say things, what their dialogue sounds like. So I decided I am going to take my IP back, which was easy to do. I just let the option lapse. And then I am writing my own treatment. We are going to shop that around to other producers and let's see what happens in this next go round. I'm really excited about the process and I'm excited about writing a screenplay. I am really excited about, just a whole new way of looking at these characters and the trilogy and trying to see how we can bring all of those to life in the true fashion that I think they were meant to be brought to life.
Yeah. Well, I know you're going to do a great job because your stories are very rich in detail and imagery and scenery. You are immersed in all of your stories. And to me, that's basically what you're doing in a screenplay are these beautiful visual scenes.
Thank
So,
you.
well, we're proud of you and we're very excited and we can't wait to see the end product, of course. And also for our listeners, I had mentioned you can go on her website. We'll tell you at the end how to get to her website. But there are a couple scenes that you filmed just to give us a little bit of a taste of what's going on in the current story. And you could see that same level of detail and imagery. It's beautiful.
You know what
So,
I did? I decided that maybe for 6 days in Bombay, I would try something very different
yeah.
in terms of marketing. And it's the kind of thing I used to do when I ran my own marketing business way before I became a full-time author. I would always try to think of out of the box ideas of promoting someone's product. So I thought to myself, well, we go on book tours with every book. What if I did something a little different this time? What if I actually decided to bring three of the scenes to life and actually pretend as if this was already a movie? 6 Days in Bombay, a movie. And it's surprising how everything fell into place. I found a wonderful set of director, cinematographer, and a crew who was willing to work with me on this. We collaborated. We brought three scenes to life. We put screenplays around them. And in one day, we shot all three scenes out in Burbank in Hollywood. And they turned out beautifully. I
Yeah.
thought that we would have like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 people on set or something. No, my director brought a crew of 25 people. The actors all showed up on time for their scenes. They all knew their lines. They had done table reads. I mean, this was a professional production. So I'm so proud of our result. And we've had so many readers who go on my social media and they see the scenes and they go, "Oh, when can I see the movie?"
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. So, well, good. Well, this book in particular that we're talking about, the 6 Days in Bombay, I want to make sure everyone knows it's a standalone novel, although it is set, of course, in India. And I know Julia wanted to tell us a little bit about the background, but of course, if you want to add anything, by all means, do so.
I do. So we do have a quick summary of the book for our listeners, and I won't give anything away. There won't be any spoilers, but feel free to add anything that you think maybe we missed or that our listeners should know about the book. So Sona, the main character, we meet Sona, and she's a nurse in a Bombay hospital just before the start of World War II. A renowned painter arrives at the hospital after a miscarriage. She's expected to make a quick recovery, and her nurse, Sona, is excited to learn more about the vivacious artist who shares her half-Indian identity. Sona yearns for a larger life, and she finds herself carried away by Mira's stories of her travels and her exploits, and is shocked by accounts of the many lovers the painter has left scattered throughout Europe. When Mira dies, quite suddenly and mysteriously, Sona falls under suspicion, and her quiet life is upended. The key to proving Sona's innocence may lie in a cryptic note and 4 paintings Mira left in her care, sending the young woman on a mission to visit the painter's former friends and lovers across a tumultuous Europe teetering towards war. On the precipice of discovering her own identity, Sona learns that the painter's charming facade hid a far more complicated, troubled soul. And you really explore the idea of how far we'll travel to determine where we truly belong.
Yes, absolutely. That was a great summary. I love it.
Did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Well, I think that the most important thing is that this whole idea started with an actual painter who lived in India and in Europe in the 1930s and 40s. So Mira, the painter in the book, is inspired by Amrita Sher Gill, the true life painter who was really more like Frida Kahlo, as we know that particular personality. Mira was, um, bombastic. She was so confident in her artistic ability. She was a prodigy. And so she had always had lots of kudos on her painting ability. And over time, she developed her own style. She copied a lot of other people's style, Gauguin, Cézanne, Modigliani, just to sort of, get an idea of what her style was. And then when she finally painted her own work, it was in India, and she really sort of got an idea of what it was like to do her own painting, her own interpretation of village life in India. And it was so different from what everybody else was doing. Well, at the age of 28, um, Amrita showed up at a hospital in India. She was complaining of abdominal pain. 2 days later, she was dead. So, because she died at such an early age, and because the circumstances around her death were so mysterious, nobody's ever actually been able to explain what happened. Um, I wanted to explore what would life had been like for her had somebody carried her name forward, had somebody had the ability to find out more about her life and therefore find out more about that death. How did such a young, vibrant, healthy woman die so suddenly and so quickly? And then also, I want Amrita's name not to be forgotten. I want the names of female artists throughout the ages who usually get a second place next to male artists. Male artists, whoa, we all know Picasso, we all know Modigliani, we all know Leger and Franz Klein and all of these people, but we don't know all the female artists. And there have been so many who have been dropped by the wayside in history. So I don't want this particular artist to be forgotten. And that was one of the main reasons why I started writing 6 Days in Bombay.
Oh my gosh, I did not know about the kernels of truth in this story and what spurred you to explore that and write that. And that just adds an entire another facet to the story. That is really awesome. All right. So my first question for you, as I was reading, it became so clear how important family and taking care of elders is to Indian culture. And this was evident in multiple characters. Sona's desire to provide for her mother, that worry and that concern and just making sure she has a really good life. Indira's loyalty to her abusive husband, and even in the respect between Dr. Stoddard and his son. So it was a recurring theme. And do you see Sona's commitment to Mira and her story as an extension of that familial importance and loyalty in Indian culture? Or maybe does her role as a caretaker or nurse prime her to feel connected to and driven by somebody that she just met?
Well, I love that you brought this out as a question and that you picked up on the respect that elders get in India. My father, who is 93 years old, just came back from a visit in Delhi. He went by himself. He's very healthy. He can
Like,
do all of this travel by himself. And, he called me afterwards and he said, Honey, it was so nice to be in India and to be treated like a person, because here in the West, we do tend to discard older people as if they have nothing more to contribute. Whereas in India, it is still so different. People will come up to you as an elder, they will touch your feet because they respect the knowledge that you have gained over the years and knowledge that hopefully they can learn from. So yes, the India of 1937, Bombay, in the novel is exactly the same. The elders are given a lot more respect, and Sona really does respect her mother for all the knowledge that her mother has. She respects Dr. Stoddard. He's a much older gentleman in his 80s. Um, but her loyalty is really to her mother. What Sona wants more than anything is to live this larger life that Mira is living. That's the person, the painter is the one that she is holding up as the epitome of what she wants her life to look like, the kind of fabulous places and exotic places she wants to be, the people she wants to meet, these larger than life characters. And she wants this sort of free-spirited lifestyle that Mira has, where Mira doesn't care if she sleeps with men or women or horses or, who, like whatever, Mira just doesn't care what other people think. And Sona cares so much. And so what Sona really wants is Mira's lifestyle. She wants to get closer to Mira so that maybe she can glean some of that free-spiritedness for herself. As far as her loyalty is concerned, um, what is preventing her from living that larger life is her loyalty to her mother, because she knows that as a daughter, she has to take care of that mother. This is her responsibility. And she would never leave her mother to live by herself, to do anything by herself, to live out the rest of her years. Uh, One of the reasons that Sona is not married at the age of 26, which is very old in 1937 to not be married. Even the painter is married, even though, she's not faithful to her husband, she is married. But Sona is not married because I think she really feels this loyalty to look after her mother. And how can she do that and also be working all the time to provide for the two of them and also be looking for a husband. And so her mother tries to sort of help her find a partner.
Right. That is such a poignant conflict to have because it's good on both sides. Like you want to have this life and fulfill, inner desires, but you also want that you have that family pull and you want the best for them too. So that was just a really interesting dichotomy between her two interests.
And I think we all feel that, don't we? We all feel the loyalty to look after our parents. I think women feel that maybe a lot more than men. Maybe I'm generalizing, but I know I have always felt that. By the way, my younger brother and I have this agreement. I was to look after my mom until she died, and so I did. And he is looking after dad until he dies. So we have this agreement, and my dad is so healthy that like my brother has thing to worry about.
Got no responsibilities.
No responsibilities.
Oh my goodness. Well, I wanted to ask you about a quote that was in the book that I thought was pretty cool. Mira, our vivacious painter, she is engaged in a discussion about art, and she says this to everyone in the room. If we limit our idea of Indian art, we limit our experience of India. India, is so much bigger than our understanding of her. She should determine what represents her, not us. Now, that's one of the things I love about your writing because you always convey the layered richness of India. And I wanted to ask you, do you think that Sona needed to leave India to appreciate that? Or was she able to appreciate it maybe through art, maybe through Mira's art?
I think Sona is appreciating India through Mira's art because Mira's art really is talking about the village life. She's talking about the life of the everyday man and woman, the hard life that they have, the few freedoms they have in their life, and all the restrictions that are placed on their lives through tradition. So they are beholden to lots of different limitations that, Mira herself as a painter is, not having to pay attention to, one, because she's wealthy, but also because she is European. She's half European. Sona, on the other hand, does understand the life of the limitation that is represented in Mira's paintings. And I was so happy that you pulled out that quote about India and how we cannot just use one set of references in order to evaluate an entire country or to understand an entire country, because that's been my bailiwick all throughout my life. When we first came to the United States, I was constantly being asked these questions about India because of the tiny lens in which people were seeing India. In the 1960s and 70s, they only knew India through their textbooks. And what they saw in the school textbooks were photos of very poor people. And so they would ask me, what are you doing about the poverty? Why are you letting so many people starve? Why does the government not do something about this? And then, of course, at the time that we came to this country, it was labeled by the West. India was labeled as a third world country, as a developing country, or as an underdeveloped country. And so these are all labels that were being thrown at me as a kid, and I didn't really understand what that India was that they were talking about because my reference of India was so different from having lived there. So I think that with every book I write, what I'm trying to do is to say, hey, you may know about India through this one small lens that you have experienced, but open your mind up to a much larger possibility of what this country is and what it can be in your frame of mind. So that is exactly what Mira is trying to tell these people at a party when they ask her, oh, why don't you paint this about India or that about India? And she's basically saying, look, I think it's important for you and the whole world to understand that India is a lot larger than your experience of it. And I think that when Sona hears that, when she hears Mira say that, yes, I think it does help Sona understand the world that she lives in. It's almost as if Mira is able to crystallize for Sona what she really feels inside her head, but maybe which she has never verbalized before.
Yeah, I love that. And I agree with you because from a Western mindset, there's things that we don't maybe have a frame of reference for. We don't understand maybe different social systems. And so you're exactly right. For me, growing up, it was Mother Teresa and work that she may have done. That was our image of India. And so
Orphans, poor people.
yes. And so that's one of the things that, again, I know I go on about all your books, but that's what you are doing. You're kind of showing that layered history and all of it,
Mhm.
the good, the bad, the beautiful. There's so many things that a reader is immersed in your stories. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you.
So earlier we were discussing that family loyalty and how she feels about her mother. And at the start, I noticed something interesting about their relationship, and that was that her mom did not want Sona to follow in her footsteps. And specifically, her mom chose a love interest freely, and it didn't work out for her necessarily had they had planned. So it seems like she wants Sona to settle down with someone who checks basic boxes without romance or connection, and she just wants her to have a life and settle in. And it feels like Sona's mother should be, promoting her to find her own path and her love, but she just doesn't seem to encourage that same sense of freedom or choice. Even though they have a great relationship, it's lovely. She just doesn't have that same like, go do this. I did it and you should too. So
Mhm.
my question was if our older generations, or specifically parents, are they more likely to want the opposite of what they went through, even if it might not be the better choice, like
I
for their
think
children?
I think so. I think this is such a great question. I think generation skipping advice is a real thing.
It is that should be a term because it is.
It is. I love that.
And yeah, I think that because Sona's mother defied tradition and decided on a love marriage, or at least yeah, I won't give the spoiler, but in any case, she was involved with a British man and had to suffer isolation from her family. Her family cut her off when she decided to hang out and live with a British officer or a British Army guy, because they would have preferred for her to have this arranged marriage with somebody from their community who speaks their language, eats their food, all of that kind of thing. And also at the time, the colonial movement in India was so strong that Indians were starting to say, we really need the British out of our country. And here Sona's mother was fraternizing with the enemy, basically. So Sona's mother suffered a lot as a result of that love marriage. So I think for Sona, she does not want a love marriage. She realizes that maybe she would have been better off with an arranged marriage. And so that's what she's trying to do for Sona. And Sona's like, hey, mom, she's thinking to herself, hey, mom, you didn't have to do that. You didn't follow tradition. Why do I have to follow tradition? And I think this is really an interesting conflict in their lives, that the mother is the one who wants to go back to tradition as opposed to the other way around.
No, that's exactly how I felt. And it was also even relatable in some ways because I married somebody in a different country and, moved away. And there really is that, why couldn't you just do that here? Right? Like, and not that my mother has ever said anything like that. It's an internal thing. I want to be home and be in my culture and worry about, what we're doing. And
Yeah.
it really takes like almost breaking away from that to choose a different path. And I don't know how I'm going to feel about, a daughter, making those kinds of choices. So it was like a window into a different facet of their relationship, which was cool.
Oh, that's really interesting that you are just said that. How would I feel if my daughter made choices like that? Because the shoe would be on the other foot now, right? And
Absolutely.
you would be the person who would be giving advice on generation skipping at that point. So, who knows? Who knows what would happen? I remember when I was 18 okay, so I go away to college and I'm thousands of miles from my parents. And I came back for Thanksgiving and I said to my mom, Mom, for the first time, I have a boyfriend. And, I never dated in high school. I was so focused on my studies. And, I came from this traditional kind of Indian culture. And, I said, Mom, I think I want to sleep with him. And my mother said, okay, we will go get you some birth control pills while you're here. We'll go to the doctor because I want you to be able to experience sex with a lot of different men. I didn't have an opportunity to do that, she said. So there was another set of generation skipping advice
Yeah.
from her. I
Yes.
didn't have an opportunity to experience, love with lots of other people. So why don't I just give that opportunity to you? I remember being shocked that my mother was actually telling me to go sleep around. I mean, she
Yeah.
wasn't actually saying that, but basically what she was saying is if you are going to sleep, I don't want you to get pregnant, but I want you to have that latitude. Yeah, I think that it's so interesting. Our mothers want for us, I guess, what they didn't get for themselves.
No,
I'm
it
going to
seems
stay
that way.
silent on this one. Interestingly, I have a daughter who followed my footsteps in some respects. Julia's a
Yeah.
lawyer as well. And I've often, wondered, am I putting that pressure or is that something she came to on her own? So that might be an off the screen discussion, Julia.
I know.
Wow. I like
But
that.
in some ways you're not destined, I won't say that, but in some ways that's what you grow up seeing and that's what makes sense and it suits your nature. I mean, we are very similar, very alike in some ways, and then also very different in others. But that generalization comes across in your story. So you
Yeah.
see this mother and daughter and they both have internal things going on, but they come from the same place. They love each other. They have that cultural tie and that loyalty to each other to take care of each other. So it came across.
Yay. I like that.
Okay, I want to ask you about one other thing. We had referenced this earlier, just surface wise, but I know we want to dive into this. Now, Sona struggles with her identity throughout the story, and there's tensions, as you mentioned, over colonialism that are brewing. And sometimes she is called names like half-half because she has a white father and an Indian mother. And I wanted to ask you, she felt that acutely. But when she met Mira, she saw somebody who was like her in terms of her ethnic background, but was proud of her heritage. And I just wanted to ask you, about that. Did she need to see herself through the eyes of somebody else, even through their art, to understand and have a better appreciation for her identity?
Yes, I think that she absolutely did. I think Mira showed her that there is a way to be both one identity and another identity, and to celebrate that. So, in the real life story of this painter whom I was inspired by, Amrita Sher-Gill would come to a party dressed fully in this gorgeous Indian sari and with the gorgeous jewelry and her hair up. And then in the next night, she would go to another party dressed in the latest Paris fashion, and she'd be smoking and, be very westernized. She had no problem oscillating. And I think most of us have a problem with, being two different kinds of people at the same time. So I think Sona is able to see through Mira that there is a way to celebrate two parts of ourselves, and that that's okay, and that maybe other people are attracted to us because of that vibrancy that we bring to both identities. I think so much of this novel is stemming also from my idea of this dual identity that I have, right? So I came to the United States at the age of 9. Before then, I had been born and brought up in India, and I was Indian. I, wanted to dress just like my mom. I would beg my mom to have these salwar kameez that she would wear, the tunic and the bottoms. I would say, Mom, please, make have the tailor make something for me that's exactly the same. I wanted to dress just like my mother. I wanted to have my hands henna just like my mother, all of that kind of thing. I wanted to wear her jewelry. But then we came to the United States, and all of a sudden I'm seeing everybody around me dresses differently, talks differently, acts differently. And so all of a sudden I'm like, Mom, I want to be American. So I don't want to wear your clothes anymore. I don't want to wear your jewelry anymore. I don't want to look like you anymore. I need to look like these American girls. And I have always had this dual identity. I don't know to which I belong. And that maybe for me, much like Mira, the painter, I just need to celebrate both. Eventually, I think as I got older and older, and I think it wasn't until my 60s that I realized I can celebrate both. I can be proud of both of the countries that I feel I am a part of. And I think that through my writing, I'm able to celebrate the East and the West together because I can point out the triumphs and the issues, the challenges in both through the writing, just as I'm able to, I think, figure out the challenges within myself, trying to celebrate both of those identities simultaneously.
Yeah, I love that. And I wish more people had that kind of both and thinking instead of either or, because it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be either or for anything. I mean, we could both succeed.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I really like that you said that, Kristen, because
Yeah,
yes, I think that we could all benefit from the and mentality, just in even understanding each other, understanding the world, understanding people who don't think like us. Maybe we have a little bit of people who don't think like us, and maybe we fail to acknowledge it at the time that we are in disagreement with them. But we probably have everything that even what we don't agree with, we probably have that too. Like, okay, so maybe I say, oh, I don't like people who are really vain. But look at me. I've got my lipstick on, I've got my jewelry on, I've I have blow dried my hair. What is that but vanity? So yeah, I may look at somebody else and go, well, I would never Botox my face. But on the other hand, I want to look good too. So I do whatever I can to look good, right? I think that we are full of contradictions. And the older we get, the more we realize how full of contradictions we are, and that maybe the and mentality is where we really need to land.
very well put.
Yeah.
The and mentality. Okay, that's
I
going to be
like it.
my book.
That and generation advice skipping. You coined two
I know.
terms.
Oh
Well,
my gosh.
I know Julia wanted to ask you a burning question.
I know.
That's it.
We might have touched on this a little bit before, but we just want to know if you're able to share anything about what else you have on your radar or coming up. I know this is our third time interviewing, and you just, you keep besting yourself. So what is next for you?
So I am writing the fifth book now, and I had the idea for this years ago. It is about a young girl in 1920s India who is learning and wanting desperately to learn the classical art of Kathak dance. Now, I've written about this before, and I got the idea from all of the work of the courtesans of India and how famous they used to be at one point, and how they came from the Mughal courts, a tradition of the Mughal courts, and they were trained classically in dance and music and poetry and recitation of literature. They were like the geishas of Japan. They were not prostitutes; they were entertainment of a different kind for wealthy men. And and in so doing, I realized that what had happened eventually, when the British realized that the courtesans were helping the independence movements within India, they started to tax them very heavily. They started to call them prostitutes. They ruined their reputations. And so the classical dance that they were associated with then became known as dancing girls dance. And so they even the British were even able to make that dance seem naughty when it was really just a storytelling dance. It was telling the stories of the Indian uh, uh, old folklore.
Wow.
And uh, because of that, young women were not able to dance that. If a woman was caught dancing in that way, she was considered louche, you know.
Yeah.
And it was not until the 1950s and 60s that it became okay once again for women to learn that classical dance. So a girl in 1920 wanting to dance that particular classical dance because she saw it at a fair or she saw it through someone's window. She saw somebody practicing and she's like, you know, there's something about that that really speaks to me. I want to do that. And because she is just a girl, she cannot go to her parents and say, I want to learn that dance. She knows it's wrong for a girl to learn that. So, how is she going to find a teacher? How is she going to even find a place where it's acceptable for her to dance like this in public? And so that's what that whole story is about. Because it just, you know, it just got me thinking once I read that about the courtesans and the dances. Um, I just got to thinking, I go, well, what if there's somebody who really does want to dance like that? I mean, do you remember you know, the way that I think in Hollywood, if you wanted to be an actress, you were considered a slut. You were considered a prostitute generally, all those years ago in the 1920s and 30s. And no respectable family wanted their child to be an actor or an actress. But, you know, over time, things change. People realize that, you know, that's not the only way that you can look at this profession. And so I think I'm trying to capture a period in India when it was not considered respectable to dance like this. And really, once you see Kathak dance being performed, you would probably think, hey, why did anybody ever think this was, you know, some kind of a not respectable thing to do?
You know, I think it also stems too from an oppression of culture in a sense. Like they don't want people celebrating things that came from Indian culture, and they're kind of moving in and they're making them assimilate to other things. And just I think that's a huge part of it too.
Thank you, Juliet, because that is absolutely the case. Yes, they were trying to cut the strings of tradition. The colonialists did try to cut the strings of tradition so that Indians wouldn't have that history to cling to and say, this is where we are from. If you untether all of that, then really people don't know where they're from. People don't know their history. They don't know, you know, what's going on. And one of the things that Indians really suffer from is the fact that they don't have a clear written history of their lives. They just
And
don't. It
it's
just doesn't.
unbelievable. You're right. And it's so wrapped up in identity. And if you don't know your identity, how do you move forward into the future? And I didn't mean to cut you off, but you are so, so right about that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's you know, imagine what would have happened if in America we didn't have the history of how the people came over from England to found a new colony because they were tired of being oppressed over there. So they found this new colony and then eventually started this government. And, you know, it's fascinating just to know that history, to know
Yeah.
about Paul Revere, to know about, you know, Betsy Ross and the flag and, you know, all of these kinds of things. And if we if we know that history, then we feel connected to the land, we feel connected to the people, and when we don't, it really unmoors us. And I think that happened a lot in India. Colonialism has this way of destroying people's self-esteem, the native people's self-esteem, because it does disconnect them from their own people, their own traditions, their own culture. And it has colonialism has done that throughout the world to so many countries, and it has ruined those countries forever, right? They have become hellholes for dictators to take over, and there's no clear leader on the other side who can help build the self-esteem of the people back up. People need tradition, I think, in order to have self-esteem.
Absolutely. I feel like that's like the birthplace of pride. And without being, having pride in where you're from and who you are, you can't use it to drive you. And you even had characters like in your book, like Sona, who were content not rocking the boat, and people could call her names or call her this, and she's like, I don't want to wear the sari. I don't want to call attention to myself. And throughout the book, she kind of did. She's like, I am going to go out and going to explore this half and half of my culture. And that drives people. So without having that pride taken away by people, by oppressors, by colonialists, and, all of those things, you're just weakening people at an individual level and on a country level.
But
Yeah,
look at how
exactly.
art helps reclaim that narrative,
Yes.
right? And that's what your stories are doing. So
It's
Yeah.
so cool that you're going from painting to dance and you're moving through all these different, like, just, creative exploits. I love it.
I
I
love
can't
it.
wait
You
to
know, you
read.
know, you know why? I think it's because women have often been at the forefront of creative movements. We just don't recognize it, but women
Yes.
have often been the ones who I think lead us from one sort of cultural shift to another through the arts. And like, for example, in 6 Days in Bombay, I learned all about Peggy Guggenheim in the 1930s. She was really a huge force in trying to further the avant-garde agenda. And she would collect artists. She collected artists at a time when nobody would buy them because she felt like this modern art movement was really where we need to be. It was expressing things about us that the traditional sort of very realistic art was not doing. And so she went to Paris because in America, she didn't have that kind of support. So she was in Paris. She was supporting all these Parisian artists. She ended up, the Guggenheim Museum is a tribute to a woman, Peggy Guggenheim, because she recognized something in the arts that the rest of the world wasn't recognizing. And then she was able to help these works gain prominence and not be destroyed, as many of them could have been during World War II.
Absolutely. Well, I think our listeners are going to love 6 Days in Bombay for all of the reasons that we've been talking about. It is layered, it is deep, it is entertaining, and these are characters that stay with you. And so we are excited for you. And I want to tell our listeners how to find you. You have a beautiful website, as I've mentioned, and I'm going to spell it ALKAJOSHI.com, Alka Joshi. And you've got your video clips up there. You've got your other books up there. They can find you. And you're also on Instagram, on YouTube, and Facebook, I believe. So
Yes.
all right, well, we're going to tell them to pick up this book. We just love it, and we love having you on the show. Please come back in the future, but we wish you all the best with your next endeavors.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. And thank you for asking such clear and careful questions. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
All right. Well, what a conversation.
Oh my gosh. Every time we talk to Alka Joshi, she is such a thoughtful, interesting person, and she brings that to her writing, but it's also entertaining. So it's all the
Absolutely.
best of everything wrapped up in a beautiful book that also allows us to explore things maybe we didn't think about before, or we don't have that, experience. Just beautiful.
I love that she approaches her books with a mission in mind.
Yeah,
She has not just an idea, not just a creative brainworm, but she's like, I see how this needs to be explained and how this, needs to be shown to people in layers. Like you said, everything is multi-layered. We're reading and it's not about painting. It's not about family. It's not about identity, but it all is like all
yeah,
of it. So
absolutely.
she's awesome. That was a good.
That was awesome. So, I want to tell our listeners about some other authors that we have coming up. I'm going to list just a handful, but my gosh, we have a long list. We have Maggie Stiefvater with the listeners, Rick Mafina, If Two Are Dead, Brad Taylor, Into the Gray Zone, Chanel Cleaton, The Lost Story of Eva Fuentes, Jesse Rosen, All the Signs. We have Tess Gerritsen, The Summer Guest. We cannot wait. And listeners, we're growing every week. We just thank you for listening and tuning in. We ask that you share our socials, share those links, and we love to hear from you. So you can email us through any of our social media. And of course, we want you to stay on the Bookstorm with us. You can also find us at bookstormpodcast.com. We are also on YouTube. Search for Bookstorm and Podcast, and we should come right up. And we cannot wait. Stay on the radar with us. We'll see you next week.